Chapter 6. Another Day, Another Dollar. It started out just like any other day. I found myself sifting through the seemingly endless mound of paperwork that covered what used to be my desk. Don't get me wrong, the office wasn't the Taj Mahal, but for strip malls in the San Fernando Valley, it wasn't really all that bad. The agency still had a very comfortable feeling to it all. At least that is what I convinced myself to think in order to endure this long. The foot traffic at the strip mall had been rather tame the past few years. The lead flow, much like the atmosphere, was barren. It's hard to believe it now, but this office was once booming with excitement and activity. Look at me, talking all nostalgic and whatnot. The last 3 years of my life here felt like an eternity. Robert didn't make the trainee program easy, but I can't argue with the results. I'd come a long way from that know-nothing kid to a pretty successful insurance agent. It's funny how in just the blink of an eye 3 years could pass a person by. Late last night, a potential customer sent me an email and was curious about getting a quote. So, in accordance with the laws of proper insurance etiquette, we scheduled an early morning meeting, bright and early at 11:30. At first glance, it seemed to be a rather mundane request. On the face of it, just another run-of-the-mill insurance quote. To be honest, it was just the kind of break I needed. The phone hadn't been ringing much lately, and for some reason people have been hesitant to come by the office. There was a noticeable shift in how people wanted to do business. I didn't care for it one bit. Just as I began to rearrange the stack of papers on my desk, the door swung open. The secretary popped her head onto the sales floor. Mike, your appointment is here." I peeked over the mounds of paperwork on my desk to see who it was. I was shocked the prospect arrived so early. To my noticeable confusion and dismay, there was the client sitting in the lobby. He showed up about 3 hours early. "John, good morning." I was off kilter, and it was transparent to everyone on the sales floor. Luckily, it was just myself, Robert, and the client. "Mike, nice to meet you." As if he thought I would forget the appointment time or just go with the flow. He was right. That's sales, and I was desperate. Did you have time to talk now? I know I'm a bit early, but I was in the area." John knew I wasn't in a position to turn him away. He had all the leverage, and worst of all, it was abundantly clear to both of us. Sales had started to slow down across the entire office, and nobody could really figure out exactly why. Don't get me wrong, we all had our separate theories. I went from lighting up the scoreboard to barely scratching out a living. "John, that's not a problem at all. Luckily, my 8 o'clock appointment was rescheduled," I said with a resounding sense of fake bravado. John didn't have to know that was a creative truth. In sales, sometimes you have to be creative with how you phrase things. Lawyers call it salesman talk, but in reality, it's just part of the vocabulary of sales. I stood up and gestured over to an empty chair with my hand. "Grab a seat, John. Let's chat." John casually strolled over to the empty chair and took a seat. I made sure to let him sit down first. It wasn't a power move or anything like that. I just thought it was the courteous thing to do. A little bit of San Fernando hospitality goes a long way. "So, you're interested in getting some life insurance?" I was thinking about getting some life insurance. Yes, that's correct." "That's great. Firstly, let me say congratulations on making a responsible and selfless decision. The only question I have is why?" "Why? Why what? What do you mean?" His tone shifted dramatically. The thing about having a sales conversation is that once it shifts to an interrogation, you have to immediately reestablish rapport or you risk losing the sale completely. What I meant was, why are you looking for life insurance, John? Why now? Why not tomorrow? Why not last week? Why today?" I've just put it off for a while now and decided that I should finally just get it over with." I made sure John saw me nodding in agreement, almost like a bobblehead doll. You know the kind, the commemorative kind you get when you go to Dodger Stadium on a Thursday night. The thing about selling is, it's half what you say and half how the customer sees you saying it. The human psyche isn't really as complex as people make it out to be. John, it's never too late to get a policy in place. Do you have a specific number in mind? If experience has taught me one thing, it's that people have some preconceived number in their head. Most people tend to stick to 500,000 or 250,000, a nice big round number. You know the kind of number, the one that gets flashed around on early morning television ads. John scrunched his eyebrows a bit. He had these big, bushy black eyebrows. John stared at me for a moment and shuffled around a bit in his chair. Being a salesman, I knew this was a signal that he was becoming somewhat uncomfortable. John had his guard up. Clearly he had dealt with salespeople before. I'm not really sure. John, that's no problem at all. This was my time to shine. John was showing some hesitation in his remarks, but I knew that gave me considerable room to work with. There are normally two kinds of people I work with. The first kind of person knows exactly how much insurance they want, down to the penny. The other type of client comes to me for some guidance. I made sure to trail off, to extend an olive branch for John to hop back into the conversation. His hesitation began to dull, and John began to let his guard down, just enough to let me know he was paying attention. I'm probably the second kind of person. I could use a little bit of help figuring it out. No problem. That's what I'm here for. Maybe I was coming on a bit too strong, but I felt, given the circumstances, it was warranted. When I looked down, I noticed that John started fidgeting and playing with his wedding ring. Scientists call that a sympathetic response, basically just a nervous tick. At the very least, it showed me he was thinking about something. John, how much do you think your life is worth? Sorry, what I meant to say was, how much do you think your family would need to continue their way of life in the event that you prematurely passed away? I followed this up with a cheesy salesman laugh. You know, the nervous kind of laugh salespeople do when they try to ease the tension. I really don't know, to be honest. He stopped nodding his head and unharmoniously looked down at the ground. It was clear to me John was out of his element. I had a way of reading people. It was a gift I admired and acquired from Robert. Don't worry about it. It's not an easy question to think about. I took a brief moment to reset the conversation. I shoved some papers aside to make some additional room on my desk. I wanted John to take his mind off the question, at least just for a moment. John laughed out loud as he began to observe my desk. Mike, how do you manage to get anything done with a desk looking like this? He smiled for a second, a glimmer of hope. Who'd have thought something as silly as my messy desk could reignite a souring conversation? John, trust me when I say this, there is a method to my madness. I stopped moving the papers and glanced back over at John. He was sitting with his legs crossed and hands nestled in his lap. Believe it or not, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to figuring out your number. John didn't say a word, so I took that as an opening to continue. In fact, did you know that there are about 20 different methods for determining how much life insurance someone needs? Even the government of the United States has to estimate the value of a human life. I always found that people tend to appreciate some brief explanation of the overall process. People tend to be afraid of what they don't understand, so I help them understand it. Really? Really? To the government, your life is worth over $7 million. $7 million seems like way too much money. I was thinking maybe something along the lines of 500,000. How strange. One minute he had no clue, the next he had an exact figure in his head. Either that was a parapraxis or John just randomly threw a number out at me. I started shaking my head up and down to stall for time. Okay, let's do a quick calculation and we can figure it out together. What's the quickest way to figure it out? That was probably John's polite way of telling me to hurry this whole thing up. I'm glad you asked. In reality, I was terrified. I was terrified of losing the sale. I was terrified of looking like a fool. Most importantly, I was terrified of the rejection. People in a hurry rarely ever end up buying, but there was still a chance. Nonetheless, he came here to buy an insurance policy, and that's exactly what he was going to get. The fastest way is to take your income and multiply it by a factor of 10. The most accurate way to determine your life insurance needs is by breaking down your expenses until your oldest child turns 18. I shut up for a second, just hoping I could read his facial cues. His face was stone cold, like a marble statue. "Okay, that seems simple enough," he said with a skeptical tone. I got the strange feeling he was hiding something from me. Most likely I was reading too much into the situation. Sometimes I get so caught up in the long term that I forget to think in the here and the now. "How much would that be, roughly speaking, ballpark?" John didn't answer right away. He stalled for a bit. Over 3 years of doing the same thing every day, you tend to learn a thing or two. One of the things I've learned is that most people don't enjoy talking about their finances, especially to complete strangers. "Roughly, how much are we talking about?" I asked again in a firmer tone of voice. "I make about $38,000 a year, before taxes." "Great, let me do some quick math. Then you would need, if we multiplied 38 by 10, your number is $380,000. That was the easy part of the conversation. The next step was vital. The next step was to make this number meaningful to him. Otherwise, it's just a number. I still didn't know why he needed life insurance. All I knew was that he wanted insurance. I kept reminding myself to focus on the journey, not just the destination. Typically, people react to their number in one of two ways. Most people get sticker shock from the initial number, or they accept it. John decided to accept it. A bit too easily, I might add. "Okay, well, how much would something like that cost?" Selling is kind of like playing the game of poker. The first rule of playing poker is to play the person and not the hand that was dealt. John had asked what we call in my profession a buying question, which simply means he wanted to buy. "Here's the thing, John. Buying life insurance isn't like going to the supermarket and buying some shampoo or a can of soda. It's not something you can just take off the shelf and purchase. The first thing we have to do is establish how much life insurance you need, which we did. Then we need to figure out how long you want coverage for." What do you mean by how long I want coverage for?" It was clear that John, much like 99% of society, didn't know what he didn't know when it came to life insurance. Most people look at life insurance the way they looked at the DMV, a necessary annoyance to be avoided at all costs. Here's the thing about life insurance. What you don't know could kill you, financially speaking, that is. With auto insurance, the best case scenario is that you purchase it and never have to use it. With life insurance, the worst case scenario is that you need it, have to use it, and it's not there for you. What do you mean, not there for me? Life insurance can be either temporary or it can be permanent. Those are your two options. Well, what's the difference? I'm glad you asked, John. Temporary insurance is just that. It's temporary. If you don't use it, then you lose it. Permanent insurance is permanent, meaning that it lasts as long as you do. You and it have the same expiration date. John seemingly understood as he started nodding his head in agreement. Well, I think I only need it for a short amount of time, until my kids go off to college. A fairly predictable response for someone John's age. I'm always shocked when a grown man with a family doesn't own life insurance. I mean, who does that? How long do you think that would take? How long until your kids will be off on their own? Oh, I would say about 10 years or so, when they turn 18 or 19. That's great. John, then I would recommend you purchase a 10-year term insurance policy. Term insurance will get you the coverage you need to protect your family. Before I could even finish my sentence, he blurted out, Yeah, term insurance, that's what I need. Perfect. So a 10-year term policy. Now that we got that figured out, we have to apply. We have to apply for the life insurance and see if the life insurance company is willing to make you an offer." "Hold on a second. What do you mean by make an offer?" I was starting to think I had lost him. Most people can't withstand more than 10 minutes of insurance jargon before they space out or stroke out. "Good question, John. A quote is just a quote. It doesn't really mean much of anything. It's an indication of a price, but not an official offer to insure you." John looked at me with a rather skeptical disposition. I could tell he was unconvinced by my explanation. Nevertheless, his relative level of satisfaction aside, I needed to press forward and close the deal. So what would something like that cost me?" He was curious, yet oddly confident. The further we jumped down the rabbit hole, the most poignant, practiced, and particular his questions became. John had started sweating under his armpits and had been clutching his phone in his left hand. His phone screen was on, but I couldn't see the detail from that far away. "John, like I said earlier, life insurance is something you have to apply for. Kind of like a job. You won't get every job you apply for, and you won't know until after the interview. We won't know the cost until you go through medical underwriting. It's kind of like a job interview for a life insurance policy." He interrupted with a somewhat agitated tone. "You mean you can't tell me what it would cost until I sign up? How is that possible?" "I could give you an estimate, but it wouldn't be binding. It wouldn't even be that accurate. I mean, I can put any number I want on that quote, but unless you qualify, it won't matter." This whole conversation took a sharp turn for the worst. John had purposefully stalled the conversation and started fidgeting in his seat a bit more than before. My only chance was to break the golden rule: go for broke. "Based on your medical history, and mind you, this is purely an estimate and in no way binding. For a 10-year term life policy, it would cost you about $50 per month." I had fumbled my way into and through a sales pitch, which from personal experience was the worst way to go about it. What could I say? I'd done goofed. Without hesitation, he said, "That's a little too expensive." Did I miss something? John's posture had changed, and his attitude clearly reflected his negotiating position. What was I missing? What was it? "Before I came in this morning, I got a quote from another life insurance company." How could I have missed that? Maybe I've become too complacent over the years. Maybe I got a tad bit sloppy. I had nothing to say, and it was clear as daylight to John that the emperor had no clothes on. Before I could utter a word, John pointed to his phone. "This quote is for $500,000 in coverage, for 30 years of coverage, and only $10 per month." Animals have 3 basic reactions to stress. They can freeze, they can flee, or they can fight. For me, at that moment, I was like a deer caught in the headlights. All I could think of was to ask for the quote. "Do you mind if I take a look at the quote?" The conversation had completely become lopsided, and I could only go for the Hail Mary of dirty salesman tricks. I was going to try and trash talk the other insurance company. That was my plan, to hope for the best. John slowly and cautiously handed me over his cell phone. Part of me thought to just throw it out the window. I looked at the quote in utter disbelief. He had a quote for less money, more coverage, and more time. "Yeah, that is way better than I could do for you. I'm curious, though, how did you hear about this company? Flushy, is it?" In retrospect, what else was I going to say? What else could I possibly do? In all honesty, this sounded more like a mobile app, not an insurance company. "No, but at that price, does it really matter? It seems like the best deal I could find." "I mean, it's a great deal," I said with a somber tone. If it wasn't clear to John before, I was completely demoralized by what had just transpired. "Well, is there anything else you have that might be more in line with the Flushy quote?" He shifted in his seat and turned sideways, aligning his body with the quickest path to the exit. I had to make a choice. Do I stall for time? Do I quit? Should I double down? On a good day, I consider myself a fairly resourceful person. But today, when it matters, right now, all the clever quips and retorts weren't going to win me this client. So I did what any noble salesperson would do in my situation. I punted the ball. Let me look into some options for you over the next couple of days. How does that sound? I found myself cowering behind those once annoying stacks of paper. John shook his head, seemingly in agreement. John slowly rose from his chair. He stood up and reached out his hand. I had started to extend my arm out when he said, "My phone?" "Of course. Sorry about that." A minor brain fart wasn't going to mar this already stupendous conversation. Somehow I forgot I was holding his phone in my hand. Isn't it funny that something non-existent 20 years ago has now become almost like an appendage to most people? I handed back the phone and began to apologize. Just as I began to blurt something out, I decided to fold up. That's the thing about sales. Sometimes you win and sometimes you get humbled. Perhaps I'd lost a step or two in my old age. I had 1,000,001 thoughts swirling in my head, but most of all, what in the world was Flushy? I slowly found my way back to my desk. I was determined to do some research and figure out what just happened. I opened up my browser and began to search around the web for a supposed life insurance company called Flushy. I was shocked to find article after article about the massive success of Flushy. Before I knew it, 2.5 hours had passed me right on by. I'd be lying to myself if I said I wasn't interested in learning more, so I clicked on the website. The website was covered in bright, almost neon fluorescent colors. Color scheme aside, the website was pretty well put together. It had the Flushy logo on the top left of the header and 5 other buttons to select. There was a button that read, "How did we do it?" There was a button that read, "The Flushy Difference." One of the buttons read, "Our Humble Beginnings." There was a user review section, an About Flushy section, and a section that just said, "Contact us." Nothing fancy about the site. It was modern and user-friendly. This is probably just one of those fly-by-night Insure-tech companies. Today they sell life insurance. By next week they'll be out of business or in a different industry. But you know what? Maybe I should poke around a little more. As I scrolled down the home page, the site hit me in the face with the Flushy Difference. The website read in part, "Old conventional life insurance is sold and peddled by independent insurance agents for a commission. Because they are paid on commission, they often focus on selling excessive policies to wealthier people or unnecessary amounts of insurance to people who might not really even need it or even want it." Might not really need it? Excessive? I mumbled under my breath. Although that might have rubbed me the wrong way, the site had gotten my attention. It went on to read, "Here at Flushy, we offer consumers a modernized, mindful, intentional, and fully customizable life insurance program to protect the people you care about most." Modernized? Ha! You mean cheap! What a bunch of garbage! Objectivity was never much of a strong suit for me. It would seem these Flushy people meant to upend and simultaneously undermine my entire profession. I kept reading. "Our Flushy team members are salaried workers, so they work for you and not for a commission. We treat you like part of the Flushy family, and that means we won't try to sell you on excessive and needlessly expensive insurance policies. There is no such thing as a good deal for the wrong insurance policy." They stole my line. That's my line. I hadn't realized it, but the more I read, the more aggressively I started clicking with my mouse. The thought of being a salaried worker did sound appealing. I scrolled down some more. "Instead of wasting your money on useless things like claims adjusters, underwriters, management teams, and actuaries, we use artificial intelligence and robots. Most insurance companies would still use a quill and ink pad if they could to write you a policy." Yeah, that's right, but how can they possibly get rid of underwriters? Maybe they figured out the secret sauce, or maybe it was too good to be true. Either way, I was interested in adding Flushy to my lineup of carriers to sell. I mean, I'd be foolish not to at least look into it. My interest was more than piqued, so I clicked on the Learn More tab. When I clicked on the Learn More tab, there was a section on the Flushy difference. It read, "The life insurance industry has a big problem," and it was that life insurance companies couldn't even see the problem. They couldn't see it because they themselves are part of the problem. We here at Flushy saw an easy way to put a fix to that problem. Okay, so what's that supposed to mean? I went on to read, "The old school way of buying a life policy could have taken days, weeks, if not months to complete the process. The old process would involve putting a person through mounds of paperwork, lengthy, redundant conversations with insurance agents, and almost completely unnecessary medical workups." Blood work is unnecessary? Now I've heard it all. How in the heck can you write a policy without blood work? This all seemed far too good to be true. It had to be. I mean, come on, you got to be kidding me with all this. I started poring over the site at an even more vigorous pace. Part of me was trying to poke holes in this obvious charade, and part of me was intrigued by the new shiny object. A little further down it read, "The old process just wasn't a consumer-first or even customer-friendly kind of system. We have built the first life company with a consumer-first mindset, not an insurance company mindset. What we did at Flushy was set an aggressive goal with a simple mission. We set out on a mission to change the way business was done in the life insurance industry. We really wanted to flip the industry completely on its head." I took a second to recalibrate myself and digest all that nonsense. They put the people first by not doing any kind of due diligence and allowing experts to walk them through the process? I continued reading. "Flushy single-handedly reshaped the way people buy and interact with life insurance companies. We took the process and upended it. We kind of look at ourselves like the Mother Teresa of life insurance companies. We took the old way of doing things, put it in a box, shook up the box, and dumped it out on a table. We wanted to make a process that puts the people first and not profits." This sounds like some sick joke. This all sounds like someone made the entire website as an attempt to troll the life insurance industry. Part of me loved that. The other part of me was enraged by the arrogance and sheer disrespect. I took a deep breath followed by a deep, relaxing sigh of relief. This must have been a bunch of smoke and mirrors. I sat back in my chair and stroked my chin while I thought it out. They offer a rock-bottom price for more coverage. Now, if they were offering the same coverage for less, I could say that was legit. But then again, they don't have to pay people like me. But it did say they have salespeople, just not paid on commission. There was a section that really caught my eye at the top, and it read, "How do we do it all?" It read in part, "We offer the world's most competitive prices and coverage features. We can do that by cutting out the waste and vaporizing the old hassles of buying life insurance. We put the power in your hands and not in the hands of the insurance agent. We offer the best-in-class, award-winning Flushy Service Center, which is comprised of a team of non-commissioned licensed life insurance agents ready to help you through the entire process from start to finish. A frictionless experience that has removed the inherent old-timey conflictions that once plagued our industry." This whole situation was starting to get me pretty riled up. How is it that not only haven't I heard of this company, but they can do all this for much, much, much less than a traditional insurance company? It's not even like it was a little bit less. It was a lot less. The website went on to read, "Simply put, we are here to put you first. This is life insurance that focuses on your life and not the life insurance company. We do everything differently, and all it takes is one quick and easy hassle-free application. The Flushy experience delivers a 100% completely online insurance application process. We make it simple for you and easy for you to apply for life insurance on your terms, not ours. What could have taken days, weeks, if not months, now can be done with the click of a mouse in under 45 seconds. You have more important things to worry about than paperwork, so let us take care of the heavy lifting. We offer policies that can be purchased like buying a bar of soap at the grocery store. Virtually all of our Flushy applicants can avoid a traditional burdensome medical exam." Okay, this is pretty much just a rehash of the stuff on the front page. I scrolled down with a bit faster pace and stopped when I saw something that caught my eye. It read, "If you want someone to guide you and help you along your life insurance purchasing journey, don't be afraid, because we have a completely licensed staff of completely non-commissioned life insurance agents that are ready to help you either online or by the phone." Interesting. I went on to read further, and it read in part, "Ultimately, what we would like to do is to provide you with options so that you can customize and design the perfect life insurance policy for you. A policy on your terms that fits your specific insurance needs." I sat back and propped my feet up on the desk. I didn't have much else on my mind. Surprisingly, this all sounded kind of good. I sat upright again and scrolled down the website. This one section really stuck out to me, and it read, "The Flush Lock Advantage." What in the heck is that? As I read further, every single term life insurance policy that we offer comes with the Flush Lock, meaning that your insurance policy has level premium payments. In simple terms, that means the price is the same every single month, guaranteed. As you age, term insurance becomes more expensive, but not with the Flush Lock Advantage. As long as you meet certain conditions, you can qualify for the Flush Lock Rate Guarantee. Now that sounds like a bold-faced lie. How in the world can they do that? I scrolled down a little farther, and it read, "Not only that, but we offer a money-back guarantee with every single policy for any possible reason. If you are dissatisfied or unhappy for any reason in the first 45 days of your policy, we'll refund your payment in full. No questions asked, no hassle. You are able to cancel at any time, with no cancellation fees or early termination costs. This is all part of the Flushy difference." Well, that's just absurd. There's no way they can do that. This was all turning out to be some terrible nightmare. How could I possibly compete against a company like this? I didn't have a company in my lineup with anything nearly this competitive. One of the headers really caught my eye. It read, "Our Humble Beginnings." This would have been a lot easier to read with a shot of whiskey, maybe a double. This section of the website was engulfed in a completely white backdrop, almost porcelain. Quite the contrast compared to the rest of the website. Clearly, a lot of thought went into building this website. The page had a small blurb. It read, "Like any great business, it all started out with a simple question. How do we simplify the life insurance buying process, eliminate the headaches, and save people money at the same time?" Our founding partners, David Berrigan and Todd Dupree, both met at the Warland School of Business. Mind you, this is all way before Flushy was valued at $10 billion. Ah, yes, how very humble indeed. Nothing screams humble like an Ivy League school. Two rich kids met and made a company that their parents funded and propped up. It went on to read, "It was just a humble startup, much like Apple, Microsoft, or even the Catholic Church." At that time, David was struggling to pay his 6-figure yearly tuition and had to choose between buying previously owned textbooks or paying his life insurance premium. Oh yeah, I'm sure that's how it all went down. Someone paying 6 figures in tuition couldn't afford $30 a month for life insurance. Give me a freaking break. Cry me a river. Maybe I was digesting this all with a splash of jealousy. This was my expedition into the unknown. It was my journey down the rabbit hole, and I was hooked. It went on to read, "David didn't realize it at the time, but he ended up discovering he was grossly overpaying for life insurance. Turns out David was not the only one being unknowingly overcharged. That's when David and Todd had the aha moment. That's the moment when they came up with the idea for Flushy. David took a small loan from his father, a meager sum of $100 million. David made the same mistake millions of Americans made. He purchased life insurance without knowing how much coverage he actually needed. He purchased life insurance without knowing what it was going to cost. Together, David and Todd set out to change all of that. What they discovered along their journey was that the old conventional approaches to life insurance had been confusing, costly, and even a bit corruptible. David and Todd wanted to really make that all different. So with a simple vision, they both set out to protect families by creating the world's premier and lowest cost life insurance company. Where do I go from here? I was at a crossroads of sort, an inflection point, if you will. At the bottom of the web page, there was a bright red button which was screaming, "Press on me." This was obviously a big PhD button. It had all the telltale signs of a "Press Here Dummy" button. The button simply read, "Become a Flushy agent." It couldn't hurt for me to hear them out, right? Don't get me wrong. I wasn't seeking to join some kind of rebellion against the current way of doing things. I very much like the current way of doing things. On the other hand, I was moderately intrigued by the idea of being part of something bigger than my current indentured servitude. Part of me was scared of not pulling the trigger and being left behind in the dust, being a relic of a bygone era. What if I continued down this path? What if I ignored this emerging disruptor? What if I didn't click on it? What if I stayed the course and failed? So I clicked on the button. It would be irresponsible for me to at least not look into it. I mumbled a terse rationalization. I wasn't content enough just to become a bystander of this massive looming change. I wasn't put on this earth to merely be a witness to the demise of my own occupation. Maybe I was rationalizing, maybe I was letting uncertainty get the best of me. Maybe I was ready to take a gamble. After clicking on the button, another page popped up with a simple message. The message said, "We want you on the Flushy Revolution. Help us change the world one policy at a time." I was destined to do something meaningful in life. Maybe this was it. A web application popped up asking me for more information. As I started filling out the application, the door to Bill's office had opened up. Bill started to slowly walk out of his office. He shut his office door and threw his sports coat on. As he was adjusting his sports coat, he looked over at me. We made this awkward kind of eye contact. I looked like a child who was hiding a bad report card. "How'd that sale go, Mike?" "Wait, what are you still doing here?" Bill asked impertinently. He had a briefcase in one hand and his sports coat in the other. He put down the bag and started to put his sports coat on. The client decided to go with a Flushy policy. We weren't even close on the price." Bill scoffed at my explanation. "Yeah, that is going to happen. Luckily, we're not in the price business. We're in the peace of mind business, right?" For a moment there, it looked like Bill was trying to express some genuine tenderness. I quickly turned my computer monitor off, like someone cleaning up a crime scene. "See you tomorrow, Bill?" Bill did a little thumbs up and headed to the exit. "Don't forget to lock the door behind you. Get out of here soon, kid. It's like 9:30 p.m. Don't you have a life?" he said while walking away. That was kind of like the tea kettle calling the pot black. He was right, though. It was getting late, and I still needed to pick up groceries before I headed home. As Bill was heading to the exit, I got up from my chair to stretch and pretended to pack up my things for the evening. One eye trained on my briefcase and the other on the front door. Bill was lazily strolling towards the exit. He stopped at the exit of the sales floor and put his hand on the light switch. He turned his head to the side and looked at me with one eye. I started sweating bullets, but pretended not to notice and continued packing up my belongings. Bill coughed loudly to get my attention. I was too nervous to even look at the man. I might as well have had a big guilty sign hung around my neck. Bill asked, "Mike?" I took a deep breath and looked up from my desk over to his direction. I still couldn't make eye contact, so I stared at the exit sign instead. Bill asked again, "Mike?" "Yeah, Bill." "On or off?" A sense of desperation turned into jubilance in the matter of seconds. All of my anxiousness subsided with a single question. I couldn't help but laugh off his request. "On, please." He shot me a thumbs up and said, Don't forget to lock up for the night." "Will do, boss." Bill exited stage left. Seconds later, I heard the distinct ignition of his $100,000 sports car. It sounded more like a jet engine rather than a car. That meant I was in the clear to wrap up that contact request on the Flushy website. I turned my computer monitor back on and finished up my inquiry.